just a little bit of background. We know that the people have traveled to a place called Refidim, and they come to Refidim and they see, guess what? There is no water to drink. There are no springs of water in Refidim, so they complain. We know that Moshe Rabbeinu says to them, what are you complaining about? You still have water. They still have water left over from their journey. A couple days later, they complain again, and that's where we're going to start. Pasuk Perek Yud Zayin Pasuk Gimel. What does the Torah say? The Torah tells us Vayitzma, right? Vayitzma, and they became thirsty. Vayitzma. So interestingly, before this, they were not thirsty. So why were they complaining? They weren't thirsty. Why were they complaining? Because the supplies were low, right? They were complaining because the supplies were low. So this is very interesting. This is Ellen saw an ad for like some Israeli company that's that delivers sort of almost like an Everfresh or a Shop Delight, whatever. So she sent to the kids and she said, do you guys know about this? So they said, yeah, it's basically a company run by Americans, catering to Americans. But the average Israeli doesn't do Costco. The average Israeli doesn't do, the kind of shopping that we do. Why? There's no room. Because they literally have no room to store things. So in Israel, everybody delivers, right? Right? Rami Levy delivers. Everybody delivers, and they don't, right? They don't have 20 rolls of Bounty in their storage closet because they don't have a storage closet. The storage closet happens to be their safe room. Whereas they don't have places to store these things. Now, people who live in homes maybe have a little bit more room, but the average Israeli who's living in an apartment doesn't really have the room to store these things. So the supplies were low. They came to Refidim, and they see they're running out of water. They haven't run out of water yet. They're running out of water, but they see there's no well here. Right? There are no springs. There's no wells. Where are we going to get water? We don't know how long we're going to be here. We don't know how long we're going to be here. And now, so they say to Moshe Rabbeinu, what's going on? Like, where's the well? Where's the water? And Moshe Rabbeinu says to them, why do you test it? Right? Chill out. Why are you arguing with me? Why are you testing Hashem? And then Pasuk Gimel says, Vayitzma. Or Vayitzma Sham. What happened? Okay, no longer are supplies dwindling. Supplies are finished, right? They've run out of water, and now they are thirsty. They've run out of water and they're thirsty. Vayalen ha'am im Moshe. And they complain. It's not even they complain. What is vayalen? It's in the singular. What does it mean in the singular? Vayalen? The people, as everybody's together now. There's no more, this is not a hostage deal, right? Where you have yesh v'yesh, right? If there even will be a hostage deal. What is it? Here, everybody's on the same page. Everybody's thirsty. Everybody's complaining. Vayalen ha'am, the people, everybody's come together. Al Moshe vayomer, and they say, Lama zeh elisanu mimitzrayim. Why did you bring us out of Mitzrayim? Lahamis osivi es banai v'es miknai batsama, to kill me and my children and my flocks with thirst. Okay, significant complaint that the people have. I want to share with you a fascinating interpretation of one of the commentators here, the Ho'il Moshe, who wants to explain, why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu do this? Like, why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu dafka bring them to a place where there was no water? HaKadosh Baruch Hu knew that their supplies were going to run out. Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu bring them to this place where there was no water? Betty?
They wanted the people to see that Hashem is supplying them with everything that they need.
It's chinuch. It's chinuch. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is teaching Bnei Yisrael to do what when they're in need? To pray. To rely on Him. Right? To rely on Him. So how do you do that? You put people in a situation where they don't have something that they need, or they don't have something that they want, and they come to the realization that the only way to get it is to pray, to call out to Hashem. They become, if you will, dependent on Hashem, and this is what Hashem wants. Hashem wants them to become dependent on Him. Hashem wants them to understand that He is the one who provides for them. Why? Is this because of Hashem's ego? Right? Hashem needs them to do this. You know, we say that the imahot were akarot, the matriarchs were barren. Why? Speaking of fertility treatments, the matriarchs were barren. Why? Because Hashem desired their tefillos. What does it mean that Hashem desired? Like Hashem is like, you know what? You know, I'm missing some tefillos today. I'm going to make these imahos barren. I'll have their tefillos, right? Is that what it means that Hashem desired their tefillos? That Hashem has a need like we human beings have a need, right? I have a need for, I don't know, I have a need for a Diet Coke, right? You know, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a need for tefillah, and therefore, what am I going to do to get, that's almost cruel. In other words, I'm going to afflict these women and make them barren, or I'm going to afflict the Jewish people and make them thirsty so that they will daven to me? No, that's not how we understand this. We don't understand it from that perspective. But how do we understand it? HaKadosh Baruch Hu is teaching Bnei Yisrael that the way to function in this world in which we live is through the medium of tefillah. He's teaching them that everything that they have in this world comes about, why? Through Him. Everything that Bnei Yisrael have, everything that we have in life, all of the things that we have, we shouldn't think they come about because we brought them about. They didn't come about because we earned them. We worked hard. We were smart. We were creative, and we did it. No. Why did they come about? They come about because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one who gives us what we need. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one who gives us what we need. And that's what teaching this generation to daven is all about. But it's not just teaching this generation to daven is what it's all about. It's the idea is that this is supposed to be a paradigm for us. The imahot were akarot to teach us that what do you do at a time of need? You turn to a HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you daven. You recognize, now, obviously you're going to turn to a HaKadosh Baruch Hu and daven only because you recognize that a HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the provider. He is the source. If you need water, you have to turn to the force in the world that provides that water. Who is the force in the world that provides that water? It's a HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So,
and they're asking as an individual OT, in a way there's a collective, getting them to be, in unison, even for the bad.
So Rosie is looking at that as a good thing, right? They all came, the Kadosh Baruch Hu brought them all together through afflicting them with thirst so that they would ask. But the Meforshim don't necessarily view it that way. The Meforshim see this as a shortcoming of Bnei Yisrael. In other words, because it doesn't say anywhere that Bnei Yisrael davened. What does it say? Bnei Yisrael quarreled. Bnei Yisrael complained. It doesn't say anywhere that Bnei Yisrael davened. So this is the challenge facing a HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And what is that? Teaching tefillah to the Jewish people. And it's not just the challenge that HaKadosh Baruch Hu had back then. It's a challenge that we have today. And we are abysmal failures at teaching tefillah. We don't do it. I mean, maybe we do it when the kids are little, right? Maybe we do it when they're in, kindergarten, whatever. But trust me, when they get to be in 7th grade or 8th grade or 6th, it's a challenge. It's a real challenge. Now, it's a challenge in our modern Orthodox world because tefillah is seen as necessary but not emphasized. In other words, we have to daven because, after all, this is what Jews do, right? We have to daven, so we have to start our day with davening, but we don't have time in our curriculum to focus on what tefillah is all about. And we do a tremendous disservice because what do we create? We create shuls of people who don't really daven. They might say the words, but they're not really davening. And if you see coming to shul as saying the words, so then when you're done saying the words, what do? You talk. Because I did what I needed to do. What did I need to do? I needed to say the words. I said the words, now I can talk. And it's a crisis that is being perpetuated, certainly in the modern Orthodox community. In the more yeshivish communities, it's a little bit different. In the more yeshivish communities, it's a little bit different. Why? Because in the more yeshivish communities, davening is taught a little bit differently. Again, I don't think that there's a focus on the deeper meaning behind tefillah, what the words mean. I don't think there's that focus. And I think many, the first time that modern Orthodox kids start to focus on what do these words mean that I'm saying every day? You know when? Halavai bar mitzvah. When they go to Israel. When they go to Israel. And all of a sudden, what do you see? Now they're making, I have sidurim from my kids, right? And now they have these little color-coded tabs and pencil marks, It didn't happen in yeshiva here in America. Where does it happen? It happens in Eretz Yisrael. Happens in Eretz Yisrael.
Teach it that's different.
What?
How do the teachers teach it differently?
Well, first of all, the whole environment lends itself to more spirituality. Right? You're living in America. Most of these environments don't lend themselves so much to spirituality. They lend themselves to, I have a curriculum, I have a New York State Regents, right? I have a New York State Regents that I have to prepare these kids for a New York State Regent exam. I have to get these kids into college, That's the emphasis, that's the focus. So if that's the emphasis and that's the focus, how much time of the day can I possibly give to tefillah? Right? Now, in Israel, so maybe they have a class or two in tefillah, but what happens? A lot of these kids are now caught up in the spirituality of being in Israel. So now they're spending time when they're not in class or they're not in shir, going over the meanings of words and realizing, what am I saying? What am I saying? For me, the biggest bracha of COVID was precisely that. Was the ability. I used to sit. I never davened as well as I did during COVID. I never did, right? Because it's always a rush, always trying to keep up, right? Catch up or keep up or skip to. You didn't have to worry about that in COVID.
So then why don't the modern Orthodox, let's call us modern Orthodox rabbis, go to the such an important thing. It's what we are. Why doesn't your community of rabbis go to the schools? We have quite
It's a great question, and the question is much better than an answer. I don't have a good answer other than, there's a pushback from schools. What's the pushback? The pushback is we're only here, we only have the kids for so many hours, right?
But then they sacrifice a little bit of that.
And so what happens when they sacrifice? So then you have parents who are like, how come my kids haven't started learning Gemara yet? Right? So it's one thing if you're, or then halavai, that's the response, but often the response is, how are they going to pass their regions? Right? How are they going to learn math? How are they going to learn? There's only so many hours, in the day. Only so many hours in the day. This is
What's more important?
who defines, but the question is who defines importance? You're right.
The administration.
Theoretically, but more often the parent body. More often the parent body. Yeah, I don't want to get too far off the topic, but okay.
Maybe it could be incorporated. You talk about it in which you live. Maybe it's been incorporated in Mashon, and then so on Mashon. That when they learn Hebrew, that some of the.
The problem is our tefillah is not lashon, right? You can't possibly learn modern Hebrew through our tefillah. That's not the way our tefillah works, right? Yeah, correct. I agree. Anyway, let's. Did you want to say something, Debbie? No.
I just want to say the whole yeshivish mindset is completely different. They're davening all day, like, oh, I can't find my book. Oh, let's talk to Hashem. You know what I mean? Just like I see with my grandchildren, it's a whole different mindset.
It's a little bit of a different world. It's a little bit of a different world. In the yeshivish world, it's a little bit of a different world. I have to tell you, I learn with my grandchildren. I love my grandchildren dearly, and I love their parents dearly. But I will tell you that sometimes when I sit and learn with my grandchildren, and the way they learn, I'm sort of like banging my head on the table. They learn. It's called a taich. Right? You know what it means? Bereshis, in the beginning, bara Elokim, God Elokim created. Es hashamayim, the earth, right? And the heavens, the es haaretz, and the earth. And they do this not only with Chumash, they do it with Mishnah, they do it with Gemara. This is the way they start to learn. Now, obviously, as they learn more, as they get older, they transition more, and it seems Baruch Hashem to be successful. It's a success. I hate to say it's a successful way. I have grandchildren who have memorized Mishnayos. Not one Mishnah, not two Mishnahs, 10 Mishnayos, right? 15 Mishnayos, 20. That's a big thing. But it's a different, it's a different kind of emphasis, a different kind of world. Okay. Anyway, let's come back here. Okay, so the idea that they that Bnei Israel have run or are now thirsty and have run out of water, I'll just share with you the following comment. Where did I put it? Hang on. So the Or HaChaim says as follows, along the lines of we're discussing. Hine ha'inyan yolid hatema lama yiviyem Hashem el hanisayon hagadol hazel lamus batzama. We have to ask the question, says the Or HaChaim, why did God bring the people to the state where they were potentially going to die from thirst? Why did Hashem do that? Ukefi hasechel, from our perspective, Yisha'er adam shedavar ze uchdomet tolid hakfira. What can this lead to? It can lead literally to denying Hashem. Or if you think about it, if you think about this story, Hashem is bringing them to a place. They're in the midbar. Hashem is bringing them to a place where they're going to run out of water, and there's no water there. That can lead to kfira. That can lead to denying Hashem in the world. Like, why in the world would a God of compassion and mercy, why in the world would he do this? He's obviously not compassionate, not merciful, or else, ways wasn't working, and he's bringing them to the wrong place. What's going on here? Says the Or HaChaim, v'od, and an additional question. Tigdal hakushya al Moshe. Not only is this a question against Hashem, or a question about what Hashem did, says the Or HaChaim, but it's a question about Moshe. Because what should Moshe have done when the people came to him? What did Moshe Rabbeinu do at Kriyas Yamsuf? The people came to him and they said, we're stuck. What did he do? He prayed. So here, Shebemakom sheyazor chalatzav batfilah v'tachanunim, that instead of Moshe Rabbeinu praying, right, girding his loins, whatever that means, right, girding his loins and praying, ba b'ta'ana lifnei Hashem od ma'at uskaluni. What did Moshe Rabbeinu do? He comes to Hashem and he says to Hashem, they're going to kill me. What should he have done, says the Or HaChaim? He should have come to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and said, what are you doing? They need water. Give them water. But what does he say? He comes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and he says, Od ma'at uskaluni. They're going to kill me. That's a kasha on Moshe. So we have a kasha, says the Or HaChaim, on why Hashem did this to the Jewish people, and a kasha on Moshe, why Moshe responded the way that he did. Says the Or HaChaim, Kishireh ki lo chashash al hatzim onam ve'al mos b'nei Yisrael batzama ki kasuv me'id ki tzamulam. We see Moshe wasn't so concerned that they were gonna die of thirst. What was Moshe worried about? On ma'at uskaluni. They're gonna kill me. And what should Moshe have said? Hey, they're gonna die. They need water. But that didn't happen. V'nir es, says the Or HaChaim, it appears Ki Hashem nisa osam lahadricham laseis einehem ulehispalel lifnei Hashem ki ze ikar gadol be'emunah uvahashlamat hanefesh. That what? This is all about Hashem teaching Bnei Yisrael to daven, because davening is part of emunah. Right? If you believe in Hashem, then the normal, natural response to a want or to a need is to daven. It's to daven, yes.
I have two questions. Did it even work, Hashem's plan? Do we see in the Midbar ever when Israel behaving the way Hashem wanted it? Like Yaakov Avinu prayed to Hashem, he talked to Hashem when he needed. Then he was dragged to Mitzrayim with 70 other people, 69. And then they came stuck in the Tum'ah. They got to the 49 level of Tum'ah. Then they were dragged out with children and everything. And then they were expected to know to pray. Like, did it ever work?
Well, good question. What's the second question?
The second, I'm saying where is it in the,
Okay.
we see in the
So-
history that we learned from this way of treatment, like, couldn't Hashem knows everything, like, this doesn't make sense to me.
So I hear you. It's a good question. My wife complains that I spend more time than I should on social media. Okay, she's probably right, because she's 99.999% right about everything else. So she's probably right about this as well. I can't say 100 because I just can't say it. But so But I tell her, I said, I always see something that I can use in teaching. She just rolls her eyes at that, but I will share with you. So I came across some time ago this story. I can't keep it straight. An Instagram story, I can't keep all the things straight, but a story of this woman who a teacher, a plain elementary school teacher, who needed to undergo extensive heart surgery. And she has the heart surgery, and now she's recovering, right? And someone is talking to her and asking her about one of the students in her early classes. And she says, yes, I remember him very well. And I remember he was a handful. And I remember that the other teachers, basically gave up on him. And I always worked very hard, and you know where the story is going, right? Turns out this young boy that she never gave up on turns out to be her heart surgeon, and he comes in the room, and there's a whole, and of course he says, your bill is paid, you don't have to worry. It's like one of those things, where you get like the goosebumps just listening to the story. The answer is, we don't know what we give in chinuch when it takes root and when it grows and produces fruit, right? I promise you it doesn't happen the same year that we teach, right? It doesn't. It takes time. So did Bnei Yisrael, was Hashem successful in incorporating within Bnei Yisrael this concept of tefillah? So the answer is, look at us. What do? We daven. Now, do we daven with as much kavanah as we should? Do we daven appropriately? Do we turn to Hashem when it's not Shacharis, Mincha, or Mariv and ask Hashem for things? But it's part of us. In other words, tefillah is part of Jewish DNA. It's there. I think of, various people, who have been in our community. I'll just give you one example. I think it was Sarita Gresh's mother, if I recall correctly. Every morning would say the entire Sefer Tehillim. Every morning. Like I can't even get up to get to shul on time. And here's this woman who every morning was saying the entire Sefer Tehillim. Where does that come from? Right? Obviously Hashem implanted that within us. That's the chinuch. Now, do Bnei Yisrael complain throughout their entire 40 years in the Midbar? We know they do. And did they learn the lesson? Probably not fully at this point, but it ultimately becomes a part of us. I mean, it's interesting because you see here, we didn't finish the Orach Chaim, but you'll see here, Bnei Yisrael don't daven. The Orach Chaim says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to teach them to daven, but is he successful in this particular incident? No. Did they daven here? No, they didn't daven. What did they do? They complained, right? They complained to Moshe. They argued, they quarreled, they complained. They didn't daven. It doesn't say anywhere here that they daven. But the Orach Chaim is explaining why Hashem put them in this position to start to teach them to daven. It's a process. You need to take the first steps. That's why kindergarten is so important. What is that? Everything I needed to learn about life, I learned in kindergarten or something. Is that something that they say? Right? Is that it's the name of a book, right? Right? Because we learned these fundamental basic. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu, says the Orach Chaim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought them into this situation in order to create within them the idea that when you are in need, what should you do? You should turn to me. Did they turn to him here? No.
But sometimes the language of Vayitz'aku is kind of intertwined with tefillah.
Okay, correct. Well, that's correct. But we don't see here, right? We don't see Bnei Yisrael Vayitz'aku. We see Moshe.
Yes.
Vayitz'ak Moshe, but we don't see Bnei Yisrael doing that. Right? So according to the Or HaChaim, what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is trying to do is not manifesting itself right now. We don't see it right now. But listen to what he says. He says, V'nira, right? V'nira, and it appears, Ki Hashem nisa osam lahadricham la'seis enehem lispalel lifnei Hashem, ki ze ikar gadol be'emunah. V'timtza, shenischacham Hashem al hadavar, v'lo nasan lehem man yom lachodesh. And where else do we see this? We see it in what we learned previously when Bnei Yisrael got the man. HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't give them the man once a month. What did HaKadosh Baruch Hu do? He gave them the man every single day. So they didn't have a storage of man for a month. Because then you would only look to Hashem when the man ran out. Now, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is teaching them to reach out to him, to look to him when? Every single day. Every single day. Yeah. You want to say something?
But they always used Moses as the intermediary. That was supposed to
Because they're oisvorfs, right? I mean, Bnei Yisrael, what are oisvorfs, right? Lowlifes, right? They're lowlifes. Who are we talking about? Now, on the one hand, we're talking about Bnei Yisrael. So, yes, it is terrible to refer to Bnei Yisrael that way, right? I should probably do tshuva, right? And not nice to refer to Bnei Yisrael that way. But yes, they're Bnei Yisrael. Yes, at Kriyas Yamsuf they saw Hashem more clearly than even sometimes we say the greatest of Nevi'im, with the exception of Moshe Rabbeinu, right? They saw Al Hayam, what Yechezkel ben Buzi didn't see, right? What Yechezkel didn't see, they had a greater, but at the same time, they were still slaves for all of these years, and this remained within them, which is why the generation that came out, that was a generation of who were the leaders of that generation, they had to die. Because they could not change. They could not change. So Hashem is being mechanech them. It's being mechanech them. See, it reaches a point where the chinuch doesn't take, and Hashem says, I got to wait for a new generation. Tina.
I remember that when the Israel were in Egypt and they were slaves.
Talk a little bit louder.
And the Israel were in Egypt and they were slaves, and they didn't have a day off, and they were really pretty low end. And Paro died, I think, right? He died, and then they had like a day off, and it says there, Vayitz'aku b'nei Yisrael el Hashem.
Yeah, correct.
So they did that.
Correct.
They had a
Correct.
template of some sort.
That's correct. You're absolutely
Maybe
right.
from the Avot.
I don't know what she said.
I'm going to repeat it, Rosie.
They didn't have something in
No, so Tina is saying that yes, it's true that Bnei Yisrael cried out to Hashem in the Midbar. The Or Chaim asks the question. He says, if Bnei Yisrael had the experience in Mitzrayim, if Bnei Yisrael had the experience of crying out to Hashem in Mitzrayim, if Bnei Yisrael have the experience of standing at Kriyas Yamsuf and crying out to Hashem, so why not now? Why didn't they do it here? So the Or Chaim actually explains, and he says, because they expected it. In other words, they expected there to be water. In other words, if Hashem is taking them into the Midbar, what do they expect? How do you take us into the Midbar without providing us for water? With water, they expected it to be there. And because they expected it to be there, it wasn't something that they davened for. It was more like, wait a minute, what do you mean it's not here? What do you mean it should be here? How do you take us into the midbar, and how do you cause us to die in the midbar? Basically, what they're saying. So yes, they had this template of davening when things were absolutely terrible, and what Hashem is trying to teach them is you don't only daven when things are terrible, but you daven all the time, right? You realize you need this all the time.
On after the conquest to Sefer Shoftim, it's a cycle. They see things are
Yeah,
terrible,
exactly.
and then I think the problem is nomenclature. You call it davening. It's by Yizaku, by Yamku. They sigh, they
And then a
moan,
shofet.
they shout out. You know.
You're right.
They're
These-
saying Ashrei.
Correct. These are all. I mean, these are all of these things are expressions of tefillah.
Communication.
Correct. Right. Of tefillah. The Rambam talks about a woman's obligation in tefillah. Right. The Rambam talks about a woman's obligation in tefillah. In other words, how come we don't have a shul full of women at Shacharis? Right. Or at Mincha or at Mariv. Right? I mean, occasionally we have women who are coming. They have yard site, whatever. They want to say Kaddish. They come. Right, but we don't have we have lots of men who come who are not saying Kaddish, but there are very few women who come who don't say Kaddish. The obligation of tefillah by women is different than it is by men. Women have other demands on their time that men do not necessarily have. However, we want to understand that. So the Rambam says it's enough for women to connect once a day with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I saw a beautiful comment that says when a woman says in the morning, when everything is going on in the house, and a woman says, "Hi," she's been yotzei her tefillah for the day, right? In other words, she's connected. It's what you're talking about, connecting. She's connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. She's made that connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yeah, I want to come back.
I just
Okay.
want to just give credit that they prayed, I think, when they were in war, like when they kept.
Well, we're going to come to that. This is the end. This is the end of the. This is the end of our time in Refidim. We're not there yet. We're still at the beginning of our time in Refidim. Refidim has two major elements to it. Number one is the lack of water, and number two is the battle against Amalek. Right? Those are the two things, the two main events of Refidim. We're focusing now on the first one, which is the lack of water. Okay. So, what's the end of this pasuk? It's a very interesting end of the pasuk. The pasuk says, "Why did you do this? To bring us out of Mitzrayim? Lahamis osi v'es banai v'es miknai bat sama, to kill me and my children and my flocks, bat sama." When I say me is referring to the the people, right? It's not couched in the plural because the people are all together here. They're speaking as a singular entity. This idea of this expression, Osi v'es banai v'es miknai, me and my children and my flocks, prompts a lot of discussion among the Mefarshim. We find in the Medrash, in the Mechilta, it says, Hishvu behemtan ligufan. That what? That Bnei Yisrael placed their animals in the same category as themselves. Why are you going to kill Hamis Osi, me, the Es Banai and my children, the Es Miknai and my animals? All one category. Me, my children, and my animals. Says the Medrash, why did Bnei Yisrael do that? Amru behemto shel adam hi chayav. What's the expression, says the Mechilta? That the animal of a person represents that person's livelihood. Behemto shel adam hi chayav. The animal of a person is representative of this person's ability to survive. To survive, right? To live. Adam hamahalech baderech im ein behemto imo hu mistagef. If a person is on the journey, if a person takes a journey and he doesn't have his animal with him, he's distraught. In other words, what is the idea behind this? Obviously, we live in a different kind of society than they lived in those days. But what did an animal represent to the Jews then, to Bnei Israel then? The animal represented the ability to live, right? The ability to live, right? And therefore, when the Jews talked about this threat of thirst, it was not just me and my children, but it was also my animals. There's a fascinating comment by the Torah Tamima in which he wants to explain an interesting halacha in the Shulchan Aruch. The Torah Tamima quotes this Mechilta, exactly what I just said to you, and then the Torah Tamima says as follows. He says, from here we can understand something that's written in the Shulchan Aruch, in Hilchos Shabbos. He says, the Shulchan Aruch writes, the Magen Avram writes in the Shulchan Aruch, Im choshesh adam sheyikchu listim behemto. That if a person is worried on Shabbos that the ganavim, right, the thieves are going to come and steal his animal, v'lo yihyeh lo bameh lahachayos atzmo, and his method, his source of livelihood will be gone. Source of livelihood will be gone. In other words, how can an animal be a source of livelihood? Animals give milk, they provide meat, they can plow a field, right? They can produce other animals, right? So eggs from chickens, whatever it is, okay? So if a man feels this, a person feels that he's concerned about his animal's safety, malbusho biyamei hakor, or he's concerned about clothing at a time when it's very cold. Heve kamo pikuach nefesh shedocha es haShabbos. What is it? Says the Magen Avram. It's pikuach nefesh. Pikuach nefesh. A fascinating comment by the Magen Avram that it's docha Shabbos. And what's the status of an animal on Shabbos?
It's in
An
the
animal-
Like when you say Kiddush on Shabbos, you say, Ato vincha bitecha avdecha v'amadcha v'gercha.
Right, the animal is supposed to, right, I'm not allowed to work my animal on Shabbos. That's true. But what's the halachic status of an animal on Shabbos? The halachic status of an animal on Shabbos is muktzah. An animal is muktzah on Shabbos. Now, this obviously presents a significant obstacle for people who have pets. Right? If an animal is muktzah on Shabbos, so what do you do with pets? How do you have a pet dog or a pet cat or a reisnish? I don't know what else.
Or parakeet.
I'm not sure I put parakeets in the category of pets, but okay. Right? Okay. Right? Or the goldfish that your kids brought home from the Purim carnival, right? That you had to flush down the toilet when they died, whatever. So how do you have pets? So there's a whole discussion in halachic literature. It's a whole discussion about whether or not the concept of muktzah by animals has changed because of the way in which we interact with animals has changed. So for instance, those of you who are second generation, whose parents were survivors of the Holocaust, it is exceedingly rare to find survivors or children of survivors who have dogs as pets. Who have dogs as pets, right? And they almost come from a world where it's pasnished. Jews don't have dogs as pets, right? Now, why?
The Nazis used them.
Okay, so the Nazis used them, right? The German shepherds, right? The dogs, the Nazis used them, okay? But also in that time, what were dogs used for?
Security.
Right. Where did dogs live? They didn't live inside the house. Where did they live? They lived in a doghouse outside. Their job was to protect, to guard animals, possessions. They weren't companions. They weren't. Today, I mean, Nebuch. I don't know that our dogs would survive in that time, right? Dogs today are a little bit mushy. Where do they sleep?
In your bed.
In your bed, right? You give them the food, right? It's a different. So there's a whole halachic discussion as to whether or not animals, right, pets that are there for companionship, are they muktzah or not muktzah? But clearly, animals like farm animals or other animals are muktzah. And they're muktzah, which raises all kinds of interesting questions on Shabbos. You have animals that need to be milked on Shabbos. How do you do that? How does a frum person own a dairy farm? How does that work? How do you do those things? These are all interesting halachic questions. But says the Magen Avram, at a time when animals, he's talking about animals that were certainly not companions, right? Your cow in the field, right? Or your goats or your sheep, right? So what does he say? He says, if you're worried that they are in danger of being stolen, so you can push aside Shabbos. You can push aside the laws of Muktzah. You can be Doche Shabbos. If it's cold and you need clothing, you're worried about your clothing, that's Doche Shabbos as well. So this idea that the Pasuk tells us has halachic significance as well. It's not just, that they considered them a source of livelihood. They did consider them a source of livelihood. And they were worried that not only were they going to die, but their animals were going to die as well. I mean, if you have a little bit of water, who gets the water, right? The children get the water, not the animals. So the animals are going to die. So they're worried about that. But the halachic principle, which the Mechilta sort of mentioned, right, goes beyond that. And the Mechilta actually suggests that we learn from here that when it comes to people's livelihood, animals are very important, so important that under certain circumstances they can push aside Hilchos Shabbos. Very interesting discussion. Okay. Okay, so what do we see? So now, what's Moshe's response? Vayitzak Moshe el Hashem lemor ma e'aseh la'am hazeh od ma'at uskaluni. Right? Moshe Rabbeinu cries out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and says, what am I going to do? They're going to kill me. Says the Medrash, again the Mechilta, Lahodia Shivcho Shel Moshe. This is coming to tell us, to praise Moshe Rabbeinu. Why? Shalo Amar Hoil Vehem Midainim Imi Eini Mivakesh Alehem Rachamim Ela Vayitzak Moshe El Hashem. In other words, what could Moshe's response have been? It could have been one of spite. In other words, what have the people just done? Right? They're complaining, they're fighting, they're quarreling with Moshe. Why did you bring us out of Mitzrayim? Why did you put us here? What could Moshe's response have been? Fe on you. In other words, I don't want to have anything to do with you. This is the way you talk to me. This is the way you complain about me. I don't want to have anything to do with you. Says the Mechilta, no. What did Moshe Rabbeinu do? Vayitzak el Hashem. Moshe Rabbeinu understood that Bnei Yisrael were quarreling with him, were fighting with him. This was not personal against him. This was where Bnei Yisrael were, and Moshe Rabbeinu responded by calling out to Hashem, by literally by davening. Okay? Okay. And Rosie, go ahead.
I said that's what I said before about Yitzhak. It goes a long way.
Yes, correct. That's correct. Okay. Rosie said that's the idea right here. So the Mechilta goes a little bit further and says regarding this idea, Moshe says they're going to kill me. Says Moshe, Amar Moshe lifnei hamakom, beincha uveinam ani harug. Basically, what does Moshe Rabbeinu say? I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Literally.
Ata omer li, you say to me, al takpid kinegdan, right? Don't be makpid on what they're doing. Ki samar elai sa'ehu b'chekecha. Right? What do you tell me to do? Be compassionate, be merciful, right? Listen to their complaints. Vehem rotzim laharguni, and they want to, right? And they want to stone me. They want to kill me. Moshe Rabbeinu is basically saying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what kind of job did you give me? Right? You gave me the job to take care of this people. Oh, I'm so sorry. You gave me the job to take care of this people, and what? And they're going to kill me. So I can't do it. We'll talk about Hashem's response in Yirtzeh Hashem next week. Are we okay for next week? It's a yeshiva break. Are we around? Okay, class next week. See you next week.
Thank you so much.
Okay. If anybody is traveling and not going to be here, let me know. I'll send you a Zoom link. Okay?
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're welcome, Debbie. How are you?
Well, I should show myself first. I wanted to ask you about